Um, so tonight, I just appreciate everyone for coming out. I know there's a lot going on in the world right now that people could be paying attention to, and so appreciate people sharing their concerns and questions about OUSD. So tonight is just about the challenges that face Oakland Unified. Um, and we will have, I'll talk for a while about what I think, and then we really want to hear from folks in breakout groups. And then also we'll have a report back from the breakout groups and time for questions and answers at the end. And so you see the goals over there. Um, we want to center student learning. We want to stay focused on, moving forward, support and challenge one another with compassion and humility. I love that sentence. Assume positive intent and step up and step back. So don't hold back. If you have a question, that's what this place is for. Um, but if you're taking up a lot of space, definitely in the breakout groups, we want to hear from everybody. So I'll just dive in. So there's basically two ways of looking at, and we've heard both frames for what we're doing as a board right now. So one is we did as a board pass a resolution for re-envisioning, reimagining, and restructuring Oakland Unified. And that is about, just looking at the future. And we see huge demographic changes in Oakland in terms of the number of students, where they're living, what their needs are. We see big changes in terms of just people's approach to neighborhood schools, where people used to really want to walk to their neighborhood school. These days, people are very focused on choice and they want to drive to the school that they feel is best for them. And so as we kind of confront that, we have to reimagine Oakland Unified. And the other way of looking at this is we face this huge deficit and we need to address the deficit. And so people have said, oh, is it one or the other? But a budget is really an expression of our values. So in making choices about the budget, we're actually making choices around how we're planning for the future. So it's not two different things. It's really one thing. And you're going to hear me a bunch of times tonight just saying, I really think we as a board need to shift our focus from constantly thinking about budget, 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 restructure, 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 and get a little bit more into the re-envisioning. And what that means is talking about what is our vision for Oakland Unified? What are the positive things that we want to see happen? And so to give you a little taste of that, I actually want to show a short video. This was an event that I got a chance to co-host, which is celebrating some of the work we're doing in Measure G and Measure G1, allowing our students to experience art and world language. And it's really what our board ought to be focused on instead of on budget, 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 school closure, school closure, school closure. So I just want, if you'll give me 3 minutes, I just want to show you this because it feels like this is what I want to be doing as a board member. So hopefully you can hear this. So tonight is a celebration of our students, and we are so grateful and excited to hear them perform and speak to you, to appreciate the students and the work that they are doing, and to appreciate the committee members for the work that they're doing.
My favorite part was seeing how big the band got, and my favorite part also was hearing a song that we played 2 years ago, back when I was here, being played again, Planes.
So Measure G1 was voted in by the taxpayers of Oakland in 2016. It's a 12-year parcel tax, and so that's the way it's supposed to work. We fund our children, we fund their amazing education, and what it does is it provides funding for staff retention for our middle school staff, and it also provides grants for our middle schools to be able to provide great programs for our kids, like art, world languages, music. It also provides funding for safety and positive culture, and also retention of sixth graders and above in our middle schools.
Being in the Fruit Belt, we have a large Latino population. Here is really open to them expressing themselves. Hence, we have a huge guitar class, a lot of cumbia. We're working on different music from their culture, and it's definitely allowing them to be who they are in the Fruit Belt and be open.
You get to meet a lot of people through music. It's taken me everywhere. one of my best friends, I met them through music. We have that connection through music.
Our biggest impact around what we do with the district is not just participation, but how we're making sure we're increasing enrollment across the district. And so the funds and the Measure G funds are impactful in that sense for us to continue to create, opportunities program at the middle school level. We've seen a 20% growth in participation, been able to add new sports at the high school level, been able to close the female participation gap, and now really prioritizing students with disabilities.
Lo veo que está un poco más calmado a la hora de subir prácticamente al escenario. Ya siento que le da menos pena el participar en las actividades musicales.
I'm really excited to find more resources, to bring Arabic books, to bring, there's a mom book that was recently published by an OUSD staff member that we're bringing into our libraries to make sure that our libraries are really representing the communities that they serve as well as the Oakland community as a whole.
Well, we know that if it's just about reading, writing, and math, that some students will be excited by that, but others need more. And so electives really keep kids in school, but we're able to be creative and be excited about the different offerings that we can offer, including the different types of art, digital art, maker classes. All of that was funded through Measure G1.
And so thanks for indulging me with watching that. And that, the fact that we have Measure G and we have Measure G1 is thanks to the vision of prior board members who, created those measures, put them on the ballot, campaigned for them, got them into effect. And it's providing tremendous opportunities for our students in terms of performing arts, world language, school climate and culture, libraries. And that's the work that the board ought to be focused on. And I think a lot of this can end up distracting us from it. So it's not that it isn't very, very important to talk about budget and restructuring, but we need to be able to do both things. So here we are on the redesign and restructure part, which is the part that we're confronting right now. Decreasing expenditures, reducing the size of our footprint, and generating revenue from our real assets. And to this slide, I added the words and/or community a benefit because, it's possible for us to get revenue from some of our property or vacant property, but it's also possible for us to use that property for community benefits such as community centers, affordable housing, workforce housing. And so those are also hugely important for the board to consider. So I know, some people may be here because they're concerned about the mergers on the 5 campuses. I recognize that that's a very emotional and important step. I worked on the Manzanita campus for 7 years, so it's very personal to me. I remember there was a merger proposal in 2011 or 12, I think, that we pushed back on at the time. But I actually think that we need to also keep in mind the other 4 pieces of the budget balancing solutions, which are restructuring of staff formula, restructuring central office, centralizing services, and changing the school site allocations that are right now, schools get a lot of discretionary funding that they have local control over, and the proposal is to return a lot of that to centralized decision making. And there was a gentleman from the budget office who expressed concern that we're going to spend 99 hours talking about the mergers, which are for $2 million, and only 2 hours talking about the other aspects of budget balancing, which are 99 million. And I would say that, even if you're on a campus where a merger is happening, you might have a more severe impact from all of the other budget balancing solutions than you have from the mergers. And I think there's been confusion about are the mergers part of the budget balancing solutions? You can see right here, they're item A out of 5. And that is one of the choices that the board as a whole, at the majority of the board, has chosen not to look at more school closures and consolidations under item A, which ends up necessarily meaning that there will be more impact in B, C, D, and E, the B through E. So it's just important to just be very honest about that. These are the choices that we're making. Again, as we redesign, as we go through the redesign and revisioning of Oakland Unified, which is the choice? Do we feel like we want to have a large number of campuses, or do we want to just try and have fewer campuses that are better resourced? And so this is the fork in the road that we face. And I think my biggest worry is that we'll continue on the path that we're on now, where we just agonize as a board. And, I appreciate Rachel being here tonight. I just want to be clear, like I'm speaking for me. She's here as her own person. She's not here because she supports what I'm saying necessarily. She's just here also to listen to the community, I think. Um, but this is my perspective, is that I'm worried that the current board and the next board will spend a lot of time agonizing around these issues and will not pivot to focus on student outcomes. So again, people have said, is this a fiscal crisis that the district is confronting? It's not a crisis, because a crisis is something that's urgent and important, and the deficit is definitely very important. I don't know that, we would run out of money tomorrow if we don't vote tomorrow. We probably could last through another year before the county has to come in and actually intervene. But it's really that the board needs to pivot from talking about budget to focusing on student outcomes, to starting to work on attracting an excellent new superintendent. Kyla's been here for 7 or 8 years. She's going to be here for another 2 years, but the board needs to start looking at the hiring process and thinking it's going to be a very big transition for us. We need to start talking about renewing Measure G1, which expires in 2028. And so that's something that will probably be on the ballot in 2026. We need to start thinking about the next bond, which is in 2028. And so those are the things that the board needs to be focused on, rather than just agonizing forever around the school closure conversation. So then there's the 3 dilemmas that I'm going to go through, and then we're going to go into, I'll try to go pretty quickly, and then we'll go into the breakout rooms to kind of discuss each of the 3. So the first dilemma is enrollment. Fewer students, fewer dollars, same footprint, right? So this is not only in Oakland, this is across the country. So you see lower birth rates, high housing costs across the United States in large urban areas. We're seeing lower enrollment. That means school closures. And so you see all of these different cities where school closures are being considered or implemented. It's a very, very painful conversation, and yet it's one that a lot are confronting, because we're not seeing people have kids at the same rate that they used to. And even then, in cities like Oakland, high housing costs and gentrification has done a terrible thing to Oakland in terms of pushing families out. That's not on the school district. That's happening because of housing costs, because of other costs of living. So it's just a reality that we need to consider. So here you see declining enrollment projected over the next 10 years in cities across California. And so, if you look at the declining enrollment between the first, this first circle and the second circle, a lot of that was about students leaving Oakland Unified and going to charter schools. But between the second circle and this third circle is where you're seeing just the natural attrition. Because actually, the greatest increase in charter schools was when we were under state control, and then a little bit more under fairly pro-charter superintendents like Tony Smith and Antoine Wilson. And then since Dr. Johnson Trammell has been in charge of our district, we've actually seen charter schools reduce in number over the past 7 years. And the enrollment in charter schools has also declined at about the same rate that it's declined in OUSD since Kyla took control of the district. And so currently the dynamic in terms of declining enrollment, there is still competition with charter schools, but it's also because we're seeing declining enrollment in neighboring districts like Berkeley, Alameda, Piedmont, San Leandro, that they're starting to poach more students, more families from our district. And that is a big dynamic in terms of, as well as private schools, as well as homeschooling, these are the issues that continue to impact us. The second dilemma is facilities. So like many large urban districts, we have a lot of older school buildings. Not only the schools that we have, but also the preschools that we have, the vacant buildings that we have. the buildings that we're required to lease to charter schools under Prop 39. So there's a lot of land. The district is this, I think, the second biggest landowner in the city of Oakland. And those buildings need, this is, if you ask school board members, this is, what keeps us up at night. Schools needing new boilers, needing new roofs, the water quality issues that you've been seeing in the headlines, just all the factors that are confronting our school district. And so it's across every district. These are the estimated deferred maintenance costs. The total is actually $4 billion across all 7 districts. Just impossible for us to meet. We're trying to do what we can with Measure Y, which is $735 million. We're hoping to get some of the money from Prop 2, which just passed at the state level, but it's just not sustainable for us to keep all the property that we have. And there's also an opportunity cost where there's a lot of needs that the district does have that we're not meeting. So we need another early childhood hub like we have in Kaiser. We need an enrollment office that's not, the current enrollment office is by Grand Lake. It's really not accessible to most families in East Oakland. We'd like to relocate that. We'd like to have a family resources hub. We'd like to have more special education programs. And we desperately need workforce housing and affordable housing, as well as it would be great to lease some of our empty or underutilized space to nonprofit organizations that support our students and families. So what you've actually seen in recent years under Kyla's leadership is campuses like Santa Fe that was closed in 2012, became the special education department and also houses the young adult program. Parker, it was a really painful decision to close that school 2 years ago. It's now reopened as adult education on the first floor and a community clinic on the second floor. Kaiser, which is also a very painful school closure. Before my time, the vote was in 2020, but it's now reopened as an early childhood hub for pre-K and transitional kindergarten. So there's a lot of opportunities that we could be using some of our property for rather than continuing to invest in the current infrastructure. The third dilemma is budget. And so that is, we do have we did start the year with a very healthy reserve of 117 million. We're spending it down rapidly this year with a deficit of 78 million. Next year, we'll start with a reserve of estimated at 38 million. And so the question is, I think there's probably some extra dollars coming from the governor this year, for governor's budget. Maybe there's some other one-time money we might be able to get. So we might be able to squeak through next year without making major budget cuts, but then we'll just be in even worse trouble in the out years when we just completely run out of cash. And so rather than putting off this decision, it's really incumbent on our board to take action now. I just want to be clear, this is, the county superintendent, Elise Castro, has been very clear. This is not because of ongoing mismanagement of finances. It's actually because of very good management of our finances. We made an investment, a very significant investment in increasing compensation for all of our employees. Desperately needed. Our employees were way underpaid compared to neighboring districts. And so that was a choice that the board made using, in part, the pandemic relief funds. That was a great choice. It's not that the district was mismanaged. It was actually that we have good financial management and we made the right choice to invest in compensation. But now we need to make cuts in order to not run out of money. So it's just that's straightforward. And, if we don't, the county has been very clear they will intervene if they have to. They don't want to. There's nothing that the superintendent of Alameda County, Elise Castro, wants more than to help us get out of receivership and retain local control. But she also has a responsibility as the county superintendent to make sure that we're passing budgets that are realistic. So that was a lot of me talking. I want to stop talking now, and I'll pass it over to Kim to talk about the breakout rooms.
Great. Thank you, Sam. And my name is Kim Webster, and I work with Partners in School Innovation. I'm supporting a little bit in the facilitation role tonight. So the next 30 minutes or so, we are going to be getting a chance to dive in deeper to everything that was just shared through the three main budget challenges that the district is grappling with. So the enrollment, the facilities, and the budget exploration. So that content that he just went through, a chance to kind of make some meeting in smaller groups. Each station will have a facilitator and a note taker to really ensure we capture y'all's discussion. And then we will have a chance to come back together and just kind of do some whole group reflections as well. So we have about 10 minutes per topic. And these are some norms around, we're going to actually keep you all in the same station rooms, so rather than rotating, and just talk about all three topics once you get there. So sorry, the slide doesn't match that right now, but so you have about 10 minutes per topic. The facilitator will make sure that we don't just stay on enrollment the whole time and not get to the others, and make sure that the voices are heard in the room. Any questions before we kind of send you off into some space to discuss? Thanks. Yeah, the link to the slides are in the chat, and then there's a note-taking document that we could also put in the chat as well. Great. All right. I think that is all.
I'll pause the recording. And then Erica, are you feeling ready to send us to breakout groups? Well, thanks. I know we had a great conversation in our breakout group. Really appreciate all the ideas that were shared and questions. And I'm scrolling down the document. I see there were a lot of notes taken. So that's helpful just for the district to understand what is up for people. I'm going to pass it over to Chris, who's going to facilitate the report backs.
Yeah, so we have about 3 to 5 minutes for each group to share out the highlights or what surprised you. What do you think other groups might need to hear? So if we could start with group 1. And that was Sam and Dana.
Yeah.
Dana, are you up for reporting back, or do you want me to?
Sure. Well, yeah, I can. You can chime in.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll just say a little. Thanks to our group for we started off with the enrollment conversation like everyone, and it led to some hard questions around like where are our students most populated in Oakland and where are they attending? Some really important comments about mergers and closures from families in the space that are experiencing these conversations and fear of that for their schools, and how that questions about how does that solve our budgetary concerns and our facilities concerns. So those, maybe that echoes what other people were asking as well. There were a lot of creative and generative questions around for facilities around, do we have an understanding of what could be a larger plan? How can community really be engaged at site by site to really be in a larger conversation around restructuring and re-envisioning in the district, so that we can do this together, because the reality of the numbers seems very real. What would you add, Director Davis?
I mean, I would just say I heard overall kind of a recognition of the need to do school closures or consolidations because of the demographic changes, but just a lot of concerns about how they're going to happen. The fact that when we've done them in the past, it's led to families leaving. And so does that cause a downward spiral? Are the mergers on the shared campuses, are those actually going to create significant savings, or that's just kind of a distraction from the work we need to do? And just overall, like what the process would be. So that's a lot of what I heard.
All right. Anybody have any quick or clarifying questions that you'd like to ask the first team? All right. Then Rachel and I are up next in group 2. There's some interesting questions about what was driving And like, could we get a look at the historical data around the capture rate and just where are Oakland's children going, and what are the projections look like? Homeschool, not attending, just to get a better understanding of like what Oakland as a community looks like. And then related to that is we know that if we can capture kids really early, they're more likely to stay. And so what's that look like with small class sizes in the earlier grades? That puts more demands on building space. But just thinking about how those things go, how capture goes together with the physical footprint of the district. And then a really stark discussion of the facilities needs and how do you make these trade-off. I mean, what can we expect between the locally raised and state money? Like literally, how big could the pie be given the huge need? But then how do you make these like awful trade-offs between lead and seismic retrofit? And so just acknowledging that some really, really hard choices. And a question about while the district has to vote on annual budgets, are there frames to lay out a multi-year budget so people can see a picture of what ongoing investment looks like, so that there's a plan. And so that's sort of, at least I think, and then around the budget, there were several questions around the various narratives around the nature of the budget and how big the crisis is and when the crisis will hit, and will the county blink? And so so there's an ask for more clarity, but also appreciation that like we're not where San Francisco is, and and like let's keep avoiding where San Francisco is was a strongly expressed desire. Did I get everything, Rachel?
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, sorry, I think there was one more. It was the unpacking the clarity around the B3 elements. That's still an emerging list, but there were a lot of questions about. That's really sort of very technical language, and there's some desire for better understanding what lies under each of those chunky bullet points. All right, Kareem and Kim.
Kareem, I think you're muted.
I was going to ask, did you want any particular section, facilities budget, or just which one?
It was the highlights. If you were going to give your elevator speech, your elevator pitch about what you heard. All right.
Well, I can start, and Kim, if you want to jump in, or anyone on our team want to jump into, means. So there seemed to be a general call for clarification in terms of the budget, the projections, the quality, the facilities, understanding the enrollment data. Like there was. Let's see. Let me go through our list here. And there was a need for sustainability. Like what can be done to make the school sustainable and to thrive? That seemed to be the operating principle. And then some technical questions. So what is the statutory minimum requirement for, the amount of reserve the district has to have? What is that number? Is it a percentage? Is it 3% of the total budget? Is it 5%? What is it? To know that in an ongoing way. There's also there seemed to be some energy behind getting good information, so we're not making decisions that are short-sighted. You shift kids to one facility, but then it turns out that place has got lead in the pipes or whatever. There's more harm. Are we making assumptions that we'll be able to use some of these facilities and or the physical footprint, and that it's going to be safe, or will there be lead there? And like there are some of those questions. What does it take to get to quality? And there were some questions around enrollment historically, where we're at 20 years ago versus now, and the impact of charter schools on enrollment and how that will, and frankly, the numbers that were presented, are we sure about those numbers? Are they really tied together like that, or are we losing district? Is the district losing students to charters? Is that a part of there was a conversation about that initially. Let's see, what else? One last thing. I think the biggest thing that I remember, and Kim, you can feel free to jump in on here, Sanam and others as well. So the list that was shown, it seems like the 10 schools that were identified, or some of these things are concentrated in schools that are serving Black and Latino schools. And given the politics and the logistics and everything else, historical and current, what is that going to look like, and what are the implications of that, and are we sure that's the route we want to go? And you can imagine the narratives that crop up around that, and just is that being considered as well? Because there's concerns about all of this in so many different aspects. And then also, let's not do this to create a bare bones district. Can we actually have schools that thrive, and what does that look like? Okay, I've said a lot. Kim and others, did I miss out on something? I'm sure I did. You guys have anything you want to throw in there?
I think you had it. The quality, you hit it. I think the school quality, the facilities. I think there was also a sense of a comment that resonated, which was around actually following through too. So, okay, we did these changes. This is what we expected the outcomes, but in the past it hasn't been circled back, or people received around like, did what we expected to have happen. So I thought that was an interesting thing around like advice to the district around that.
Yeah, we had one comment from someone who said their mother, I believe, heard about this conversation in the 80s, and it just, nobody dealt with it. And so it just kept going and going and going and going. And there's just some frustration. Like, at some point, why are we still talking about something that's been 40 years on the docket? Can we actually get something done and board members step up? And I don't want to put words in their mouth, but it was just mind blowing to hear that was a similar conversation was happening 40 years ago. Sobering.
Well, thank you. I think those were great summaries, and I definitely want to give, I think there's so many answers I could use to so many of those questions, but I don't know. I think Chris or Kim, which one of you is going to facilitate? I think we wanted to just do some whole group Q&A, just if people had any burning questions that they felt like, I think a lot of these are bigger questions, and we've got all the notes, and the district is definitely going to take all of that feedback. But if there's particular questions that people really want to call out at this moment, I would love to answer those.
Yeah, I think also if there's anything you heard, Sam, that you wanted to respond to, maybe as a starting place, and if not, that's fine. But if you were like, oh, I have a quick answer there, let me just jump in before we forget that.
I think, I think my concern is, I totally hear the concern about the mergers. Is this really the place that we need to be focusing our energy right now? And I feel like, that was a board decision to go in that direction. I definitely hear the concern about, is it happening too fast? I think, there's one piece that's about the actual decision that I think does feel somewhat urgent to us. And then there's another piece around the implementation that I wonder if that can be a little more drawn out to give schools more time to do the design work. I think that's definitely worth exploring. I think that, again, to me, it feels like my big worry is that we're going to spend a lot of time kind of agonizing and engaging with the county over what is sufficient progress for them to approve our budget, which of the, the B through E reductions are real and will actually reduce our spending, and which of them, there's some of them that I feel a little bit like they're actually one-time reductions, so they don't address the ongoing issue. And so I've seen us as a district kind of punt on a lot of the things that we need to do. And I feel like what that ends up doing is it means we're we're spending our resources on funding the infrastructure of the past rather than trying to pivot. Um, I think it's very hard to close schools in the hills because the hills communities organize very strongly for their schools. But the optimal location analysis showed that where we most need schools are in the flatlands. Um, and what we've also noticed with the TK expansion is the highest demand for TK is often in the hills, and there's not sufficient TK space at some of our schools in the hills. And so it really might make sense for us to do another Kaiser, right, where we converted an elementary school to a TK hub. And that was super painful because when the district closed Kaiser, the first time it didn't have a clear plan articulated. And I think at this time, if we went to the community and said, hey, we need to, not to pick on Thornhill, but we need to convert Thornhill to be a TK hub, would that actually go over a little bit better because people have seen that the Kaiser experience was not so terrible in the long run. So I think it's worth looking at some of those conversions, and then also the board needs to really move forward with planning for some of the vacant property, building affordable and workforce housing, maybe selling off some of the very small parcels that we don't have good plans for, as a way to just reduce the maintenance costs that we're confronted with every day. So that's probably enough. I talked a lot at the beginning, but um,
Well, it's good to hear. And I know we're at the tail end here, but I wanted to reopen the space if there were any questions that didn't get surfaced, or you want to surface in a large group. And you can unmute and share.
I do see some people saying the savings from mergers and closures only save a small percentage of the issue, and that's true. But I think that the savings would quickly multiply because if you closed or consolidated a few more schools, then you would be able to actually make some more significant cuts at central office. You would reduce the facilities cost load on the district, and it would help. You know, sorry, not the mergers on the same campuses. I'm talking about the other ones. I saw your reaction, Sarah. Yeah, no, obviously
which
not
ones?
advanced.
We're not talking about other ones, are we? I thought all these mergers are on the same campus.
My advocacy is that we should be talking about it because
Okay.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at.
So now I'm a little confused because I think I had asked a question around does the merge take into consideration the school personnel and central office personnel cost into that cost sum? And I think Dana, you had said it already did.
Oh,
I think so. The mergers. Oh, go ahead, Dana.
Oh no, I think I misread it as school site personnel, but not central, because I think part of the problem is exactly what we're talking about here, is that as long as we have to spread across a network, we still need the central staff to support. It might reduce some, but that isn't consideration in that number, I don't think. Sorry to be confusing.
One of the folks in our group asked about do we have a record of or an idea of how much savings has been gathered from the past decisions to close schools? I mean, we make these assumptions and we run models about what we think would happen if we close this school or that school, but we've already done it a few times. And as a result of that, given that sometimes kids leave the district or things don't necessarily work out how we intended, have we run the numbers? Have we done any type of research to show what actually happens when we make certain decisions? And so that we can base, we can have something to project off of. That was one of the things that was brought up in our group.
Dana, are there any specifics around that from for example, Parker or Kaiser?
I know that those exist and I've seen them in slides, and I don't know if if the financial team is using them to go off of. I know that they're going off of staffing models that are redesigned, but I don't know that they're doing a like side by side comparison. I think that that's really important feedback, and I'm writing it down as well. I'm sure they would be better suited to answer that question, but I know I've seen those numbers, and I'm assuming it's the same. The context is a bit different now, um, but yeah, thank you for that.
Let me just answer a question from Kim Davis in the chat before. Kim asked, how does it reduce facilities costs if we don't sell or lease the site? And so one of the anecdotes that I've heard a lot is from Preston Thomas, our facilities director, is there's often, when you go visit a school, you don't ask about the boiler at the school, but there's a number of schools in Oakland where we desperately need to replace the boiler, but it's not very clear, like, how long is that school going to stay open? And so is it really worth us spending several $1 million on replacing a boiler for a school that's only going to be open for a few more years? And so it's that kind of difficult decision that nobody goes to school and asks about the condition of its boiler, but it's actually a big cost. So if we knew that we were actually closing a school down, then we wouldn't have to invest in replacing that boiler.
I see there's a hand raise. Jerry, did you? Oh, I think you're muted. Sorry.
I've talked with Sam about this on occasion. What I don't hear or see in all of these discussions, not tonight, is that what's the correlation between not just closing and mergers, but all the cuts and my experience for 4 decades, the two of the most important concerns, student safety and student achievement. And I don't hear any conversation about what impact do these have. Our reading scores are criminal. They have been for a long time. So where is the discussion of what impact do these things have on student achievement, especially where our students are suffering the most? There seems to always be a narrative that when you close a school, the impact on those students is horrible. The district, to my knowledge, and Sam, I've talked to you about this, has no data on what's actually happened to the students from our closed schools when they've gone to other OUSD schools. What's happened to their attendance? What's happened to their grade? So I just wish there was some mention of the impact of all of this on what parents, I think, care about the most. How's my kids learning? How's their reading? That's just anyway, that's it.
No, I think that's an excellent point. And I feel like that was one of the really deep anger around the closure of Roots a few years ago, was that those students, it felt like, were just cast to different schools and there wasn't a plan, a clear plan for where they should go. And some of them ended up going to Oakland Soul, and then Oakland Soul merged into Frick. And so then they were at 3 different schools in 3 years. And so I think it's a really big concern about how we do any mergers or consolidations. And yet, at the same time, if you look at CCPA now, it is serving that community and it's doing a great job serving that community. And the district is, putting in $80 million into a new building for CCPA. And they've made a much stronger effort to actually, serve Black students that weren't as much part of the CCPA community in the past. So I think there's been a shift at CCPA that's been positive, but it took a long time to recover from the way that the Roots closure happened, because that was so negative. So I think that's one of those pieces that I do wish that we had better data on. And Dana, I hope you can help us get some of that data in terms of what happened with Oakland Soul, what happened with Parker students. I have anecdotal information from one of the parents that feels really better now that her kids are at Lockwood and CCPA, but it would just be good to have some overall data for what happened to the students from Parker that were impacted. Well, I think we're towards the end. I know it's been we're past time, but if there's any last questions, definitely want to appreciate people being willing to stay late on a weeknight, and I will bring up the I think we want to have the where to go? My Zoom screen. There it is. We wanted to ask people if you can, Kim, do you want to talk about the evaluation?
No, I mean, there's not much to say, but we would love to hear from you. There's a QR code. I'd also put the link in the chat. But the district really appreciates any feedback on, and the board member, Sam will also get to be able to hear kind of how this worked, what you would recommend for engaging the community. So we're always on a learning curve on improving how that works for you all. So please, please, please share your thoughts. And I will put the Spanish language version in just in case in the chat if there's anybody who would prefer.
Yeah, and so this has been recorded, and I will post it on YouTube and put a link on my social media for people to share. There have been town halls by other board members. I think most of them have been in person. I don't know that they've been recorded. So I really appreciate. I think Kim mentioned that the one last night there were like 100 people. So there have been a lot of significant engagements. It's been great to see the community really showing up. And this feels like such a constructive conversation. I feel like our board meetings, are not set up to really be interactive. And so it's great to have these town halls where we can hear from people and have honest dialogue. So I appreciate everyone for showing up. And I just want to thank especially the facilitators, especially Rachel for taking on this crazy job of being a school board member, but definitely also Kareem and Dana and Kim and Chris, and I'm forgetting one other note taker. Oh, Sanam and didn't I say Erica? Maybe I didn't say everybody's name. Anyway, thank you all so much, and have a great evening.